What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Chuds BBQ. My name is Bradley Robinson, and today I'm gonna show you how I made these. Beautiful, delicious, smoky, tender, mopped, amazing pork steaks on a pellet grill. That's right, folks, today we asked the question, if you remove the baffle plate from your pellet grill, can it be used as a direct heat cooker? I guess we'll find out. Coming up. This is some pork. Ooh, pat it dry. And what I got here is a pork butt, or at least part of a pork butt. Good looking fat cap on top, nice amount of marbling. And I was fully prepared to buy a whole pork butt and then bust out the bone saw and cut my own pork steaks. But when I saw this chunk sitting there, I was pretty pumped because this is gonna be a lot easier than sawing through bone. But of course, that is an option. You can go back and check out my first pork steak video I did, where I show the process of busting out the bone saw and cutting these down. But if you can find a chunk like this, it'll work out great. And we could use this entire thing as one gigantic thick pork steak, but that's pretty big. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this right in half. We should get two really good sized pork steaks. So busting out the old boning knife, I'm gonna just do my best to zip this right down the middle. Very convenient. And I do like a bone-in pork steak, but you know, these boneless ones are just a lot easier to work with, and especially when it comes to carving at the end of the day, it'll be a lot better experience. But that is a perfect looking pork steak, in my opinion. That's the thickness I like to go for. Good amount of fat on there, but also a good amount of meat, and these should cook up perfectly. I mean, look at the striations. That is beautiful. Not much else to do on these. I'll give these a little once-over, kind of clean them up, square them up if there's anything hanging off or looking a little bit weird. But we're making pork steaks, you know? They don't have to be perfect looking. And if you've been following along, we are smack dab in the middle of the pellet grill series, where I've been putting my pellet grill through its paces to see where it succeeds and see where it fails. And today is definitely a bit of an experiment because we're cooking pork steak, and these are typically cooked on a direct heat cooker, much like the Chud box, where it's over direct coals by about a foot or two. So we're still cooking in barbecue weather of 250, 300 degrees, but because it's directly over the coals, we get a much stronger crust and Maillard reaction, and of course that direct heat flavor of all the fat and drippings dripping down and hitting the coals, creating steam and smoke, which seems very hard to do on a pellet grill. But because we've got an upper rack and that fire pot is so low, I figure it might work pretty well for a direct heat pit, but I have no idea. I've never tried it before, so we're gonna learn together today. But first things first, we gotta get these bad boys seasoned up, so today I'm gonna go on with some good old-fashioned Chuds barbecue steak rub, which has quickly become one of my favorite rubs. Very simple, but very flavorful. I kind of think about it like SPG Plus, right? Because it's got that perfect salt, pepper, garlic ratio, but it's also got some savory umami boosters in there that complement the meat very well without kind of overpowering it in any direction. But nice healthy coating with this stuff, and of course you can use whatever you want. I think salt and pepper would be pretty traditional for a pork steak, or whatever rub you got. And these are thick steaks, so we can go on with a good amount of rub. Flip them over, top and bottom, and please, folks, don't forget the sides. Come on. Well, that would be a rookie move. And that is looking pretty much perfect to me. Let's go ahead and fire up the pit. Boop. So again, we're trying to mimic a direct heat cook. So what I'm gonna do here is open up the little chute, giving us complete access to the burn pot down there, and get this thing kicked on to about 250, I think. We'll see what kind of temps we're rocking. It's kind of cool. Never actually watched this process before. So after watching the temp swings for the last 30 minutes or so, I finally kicked this thing down to about 220 degrees, which means it's holding right around 250 on this thermometer. And if we open it up, we got a nice little fire burning. So on the top rack we go with our pork steaks. And again, the theory here is that because we've got such a gap between the heat and the meat, it should cook a little bit more like a direct heat barbecue pit. Because on this smoker, there's about a 14-inch gap between where those pellets are burning and where this meat is sitting, as opposed to the Chud box, which is an 18-inch gap, so not too big of a difference. But the real question is, will this work? Will it make a giant mess of my pellet grill? And will we get any of that fat smoke flavor? Like, will this drip into the pot and give us a different flavor than if we were just going to use this as a traditional pit? I don't know. Time will tell. So now I'm going to close it down, although I kind of want to just leave it open, but that's not really Chud boxy style cooking. But maybe I'll do another video where I throw a tri-tip or something up here and just cook open face the whole time, kind of Santa Maria style. That'd be kind of fun. Let me know if you want to see that. So at this point, we're gonna rock that pit anywhere from 250 to 300 degrees for the next little bit. Not sure how long this is gonna take. And if everything goes according to plan, we should get a nice punch of heat from being directly above the burn pot, giving us a nice sear. But because we're 14 inches above it, it shouldn't burn or cook too quickly like direct heat grilling or something like that. And we should find ourselves right in that middle of smoking and grilling. That is direct heat barbecue. But for now, we're just gonna keep an eye on it and hope nothing burns. As for pellets, I'm using the Smokin pecan shell pellets. Love these things. I've used these several times. And they're definitely my pellet of choice moving forward. forward. And there's a lot of people out there that have a lot more experience with different types of pellets than I do that also swear by these, so I know I'm in good company. And from all the different pellets I've tried, these are definitely the smokiest, and they have really good flavor to them. So this is what I'm going to be using moving forward from here on out on the pellet grill series, and just in general, because these are great. And they also seem to last a bit longer, but I'm not sure if that's true. So let me know in the comments below if you've ever tried these before. And if you want to pick some up for yourself, be sure to check out my link in the description box of this video. We are 1 hour into this cook, holding right at 275, so let's see how these are looking. Oh yeah, nice and smoky. A little bit of ash flying around, but that's okay. Definitely cooking. Let's see what the underside looks like. Ooh, looking good. A little darker than I was hoping, but definitely not burned. Lovely crust on that. Looks a lot like a direct heat cook so far. This guy looking good as well. Nice and crispy, starting to render a bunch of fat out of there. Yeah, these are looking good. So flip these over and get these undersides cooked for probably another hour or so. But so far I'm pretty pleased with how this method is working out. And while those undersides toast away, let's go ahead and get ourselves a mop sauce made. Start them going into a pot with some butter. And once the butter is melted down and nice and boobly, in we go with 1 small onion. Toss in a few cloves of garlic as well, and let those cook down and start softening up. And once everything is cooked down and looking nice and soft, in we go with 1 whole lemon, followed by about a cup of some apple cider vinegar, cup of some white vinegar as well, a healthy shot of some Worcestershire sauce, some of your favorite hot sauce, half cup or so, a little bit of yellow mustard, and some freshly cracked black pepper. And bring that back up to a simmer. And after simmering away for about 10 minutes or so, this is looking really good, smelling great. Lemons and onions and everything have softened up, so now we're gonna thin it out with a little bit of beer. Oops. Beautiful. And back over here at the pit, these things are looking absolutely beautiful. Been about 30 minutes since we flipped them, and they are looking nice and juicy, starting to get tender. Loving the color on there. Flame still going strong down there. And now the part I've been dreading all day, which is probably just gonna make a huge mess inside of my pit here, but bust out the mop, and we're gonna start mopping these guys with that super flavorful, tangy sauce. That's gonna help soften up any bits that got super crispy, while adding a lot of nice acidity to these bad boys, which will help cut through all the fat and richness. So, every probably 15, maybe 10 minutes or so, over the next 30, 45 minutes, we're gonna come out and mop these to keep adding those layers of flavor. We are about 2.5 hours into this cook, and these things are getting real close. Got some beautiful color on there, looking really nice. I've been flipping these and mopping these periodically over the last hour or so. So now it's time to start paying attention to the internal temp. But first we'll give them another mop while we're back here. God, it smells so good. And it doesn't seem to be making as big of a mess as I was worried about, but I guess we'll find out when this thing is all cleaned out tomorrow. And when it comes to pulling these off, it's really up to you. You know, this is a pork butt, so if we overcook these, it will turn it to pulled pork. But if you undercook them, you just slice them a little bit thinner. So really, I'm just kind of going by probe tenderness here, which is where the Thermapen comes in super handy. These are rocking right around 180, so they're very close. Usually around the 185, 190 mark is where I'll pull these off. But again, just kind of feeling for tenderness and doneness. So a probe thermometer is very handy for this. And if you're in the market for a new thermometer and want to pick up the Thermapen 1 from Thermalworks, the industry standard best probe thermometer on the market, I've got the best deal on the internet right now for the next 2 days. If you click my link in the description box of this video and use code CHUDS at checkout, you can save 30% off on a Thermapen 1. Highly recommend it, folks. Again, best deal you're going to find on the internet for the next 2 days if you use code CHUDS and click my link in the description box down below to get you one of these bad boys. Highly recommend it. And just like that, we're about 3 hours, maybe a little bit longer into this cook, and I'm calling these bad boys done. They're probing nice and tender, but still, you know, holding their shape, kind of like a rack of ribs or something like that. And I accidentally ripped the fat cap off of this one during one of the flips, so that's a little unfortunate, but it's all good. So now I'm gonna pull these off and let them rest down a little bit. Then we'll slice in and see how they came out. And after a nice little rest down, these are looking good, nice and juicy. Looking pretty dark on camera, but they do have a bit of a mahogany tint to them still. And they look nice and smoky. So let's go ahead and see if they slice up all right. Ooh, so tender. Looking good to me, good fat render, looking pretty juicy, nice and tender, but still holding together. It's a good looking pork steak. Gotta love that boneless slicing too. And there it is, folks, all sliced up, looking absolutely beautiful. Got a decent little smoke ring on there, looking nice and fatty, feeling nice and tender, holding together. I mean, just look at that. That looks pretty dang good if I do say so myself. But really, it's all about how it tastes. Whoa, that is so good. So fatty, yet well rendered. Good God, that is tasty. Nice and tender, nice and juicy. Good amount of smoke flavor on there too. And that acidity that's been cooked on from the mop sauce is just perfect. It's kind of like that, you know, salt and vinegar vibe. Nice and tender. Not gonna lie, I haven't had a pork steak in a really long time, and it's one of my favorite cuts, and this one is fantastic. It's hitting all the notes. It's so flavorful. Perfectly seasoned. Now, if we're comparing this to a Texas-style barbecue, hill country-style barbecue, like Chud box pork steak, how does it compare? Well, form factor is obviously there. The tenderness is there, the salinity, the acidity, the fattiness. The only thing it doesn't have is that direct heat flavor, right? Of the fat hitting the coals and kind of getting trapped in there. But it definitely does have smoky flavor. It just leans a little bit more towards offset smoke than direct heat smoke. But it did get blasted pretty well with the direct heat, so it's got the crust. And it's honestly a lot closer than I would have guessed coming off of a pellet grill. No, that is so good. I mean, that is truly scratching every pork steak itch. And you got these little end pieces of just like super caramelized fat. No, that is fantastic. That little end guy with all the concentrated flavor honestly did have a little bit of fat smoke flavor from where the fat was dripping into the pot. It's faint, but it's there. And all in all, you know, I'd call that a pretty successful cook on a good old-fashioned pork steak. Just beautiful. These little end cuts, like a little pork steak burn end. It's so good. It's probably because it was basted with basically straight vinegar for like an hour, but this has definitely got the least amount of like pellet grill flavor of anything I've cooked on the series so far. It's incredibly flavorful, and I think if someone gave this to me, I would have no idea that it came off of a pellet grill, but might have to make this one again. Oh yeah. One other side note about this cook, which was interesting, was this was the first episode of the Pellet Grill series where smoke in the eye was a major thing today. I don't know why, but there's a few times where there's a lot of smoke coming directly out of that pit straight into my eyeballs, making me tear up a little bit, which is something I've never experienced on a pellet grill before. So if you do have this pit and you do try this method, be warned. You gotta get your barbecue squints going, but it's all worth it. Now the real question is, will I do this again? And the answer is, if I didn't have a Chud box, absolutely. You know, pretty quick and easy cook. I do like that technique of removing the plate. I think this turned out a lot better than if I were to just throw it on the top rack or the bottom rack without having that direct heat. And I suppose if I'm ever feeling super lazy and I've got a really big hankering for a pork steak, this is a good option, but at the same time, the Chud box is incredibly easy to use and you get better flavor. But if you got a pellet grill, highly recommend giving this one a try because I'm gonna eat a lot of this. But before I do, I think it's time for the official taste test. Oh, it was so tender it flew. Come in. I flung it too hard and it ripped in half, so now I'm gonna do it again. All right, y'all, and that is it. That is how to make some absolutely fantastic pork steaks on the pellet grill. I highly recommend giving this one a try. If you got a pellet grill that can do that, it's definitely something worth checking out. And I didn't know if this was gonna work, but I had a feeling it would, but I didn't expect it to work out that well. And it's nice to know that there's yet another way to cook on that pellet grill, making it a little more versatile than I ever anticipated. But the real question is, what should I cook next? But all that being said, if you enjoyed this video, let me know by hitting that subscribe button. Let YouTube know by dropping a like on this video. If you give this recipe a try for yourself, be sure to tag me on Instagram at Chuds BBQ. Let's see what y'all are cooking. Big shout out to all the Team Chud members. Thank you for supporting Team Chud and allowing me to keep making all these videos. And until the next time I see you, please go cook something outside. Peace.